Subscribe to Storylab. Now, let's begin this one. The desert sun beat down on the convoy as Matthew Scott adjusted his scope, tracking a target 2 kilometers away. His spotter, Kurt Bruce, lay beside him in the hide, breathing steady despite the 118-degree heat. They'd been in position for 14 hours. Winds shifting, Kurt murmured. 2 clicks left. Matthew adjusted. The target, a Taliban commander responsible for an IED attack that killed 6 Marines, stepped into view. Matthew's finger rested on the trigger, steady as stone. But before he could take the shot, his radio crackled. Viper 1 command. RTB immediately. Emergency leave approved. Matthew didn't move. Negative command. We have eyes on. This is not a request, Sergeant Scott. Family emergency. Chopper inbound, ETA 10 minutes. Kurt looked at him, concern crossing his weathered face. Matthew had been in Afghanistan for 11 months of a 12-month deployment. 3 weeks left. He'd never asked for leave, never complained, never broke protocol. Copy, Matthew said quietly, already packing his rifle. The flight back to Fort Campbell, Kentucky took 36 hours. Nobody would tell him what the emergency was, just that it involved his daughter, Penny. His 8-year-old daughter with a gap-toothed smile and obsession with dinosaurs. The divorce had been finalized 2 years ago, and Lynn had gotten primary custody. Matthew deployed too often to fight it. He saw Penny during leaves, video called when he could, sent letters every week. His hands didn't shake during the flight. They never did. Matthew Scott had been a sniper for 6 years, an Army Ranger before that. He'd made shots that others called impossible, stayed calm when mortars landed close enough to taste the cordite. But sitting in that transport, surrounded by other soldiers sleeping or playing cards, a cold dread settled into his chest that had nothing to do with combat. When he landed at Fort Campbell, his commanding officer, Colonel Reyes, met him personally. Your ex-wife called the Red Cross, Reyes said, walking him toward the parking lot. Said Penny was in the hospital. Appendicitis. She's stable now, but they thought you should know. Matthew nodded, jaw tight. Appendicitis. Routine surgery. So why the emergency leave? Sir, with respect, that doesn't warrant. The Red Cross representative noted some inconsistencies in Mrs. Prince's story, Reyes interrupted. They'd reached Matthew's store truck. Officially, you have 3 weeks emergency leave. Unofficially, I've known you for 8 years, Scott. You're the steadiest man I've ever served with. Trust your instincts. The drive from Fort Campbell to Nashville took 2 hours. Matthew had rented a small apartment near Post, but Lynn had taken the house. The house he'd bought before their marriage, with a backyard where he'd taught Penny to throw a baseball, where they'd planted tomatoes that never quite grew right. He pulled up at 3 p.m. The lawn was overgrown, newspapers piled on the porch. The mailbox overflowed. His trained eye caught details. Broken glass near the garage, a dent in the front door frame, curtains drawn in every window despite the summer heat. Matthew sat in his truck for 5 minutes, watching. No movement. The neighborhood was quiet. A Tuesday afternoon in June, most people at work, kids at summer camp. Summer camp. That's what Lynn had told the Red Cross. Penny was at summer camp, came home with appendicitis, had surgery, was recovering. Matthew got out of the truck. He'd changed into civilian clothes, jeans, t-shirt, baseball cap. He still moved like a soldier, though efficient, aware, predatory. He knocked on the door. No answer. He knocked again, harder. Lynn, it's Matthew. I'm back from deployment. The door cracked open. Lynn Prince looked like she'd aged a decade. Her blonde hair was greasy, pulled back in a messy ponytail. Dark circles under her eyes. She'd lost weight, and not in a healthy way. Her cheekbones jutted sharp, her collarbones visible above a stained tank top. Matthew. Her voice was flat. You're early. Where's Penny? Summer camp. I told the Red Cross. The hospital called about appendicitis. Which summer camp has a surgical center? Lynn's eyes darted past him to the street. She's fine. She's at camp. You should have called first. Matthew pushed past her. The smell hit him immediately. Rotting food, stale cigarettes, something else underneath. Mole, maybe, or worse. The living room was a disaster. trash bags piled in corners, empty bottles on every surface, pizza boxes stacked by the TV. Jesus, Lynn, what happened to this place? I've been busy. She followed him, wrapping her arms around herself. You can't just barge in here. This is my house now. Where is Penny? I told you she's... A sound cut through the house. Faint, almost inaudible. But Matthew had spent years training his ears to detect the smallest noises. A footstep in sand, a rifle bolt sliding, a whispered conversation 2 rooms away. Crying. A child crying, trying to stay quiet. It came from above. The attic. Matthew moved before Lynn could react, taking the stairs 3 at a time. The hallway was dark, more trash, a smell of urine and decay. Penny's bedroom door hung open. He looked inside, and his blood went cold. The room was stripped. No bed, no toys, no posters of dinosaurs or drawings taped to the walls. Just carpet and dust, and a single bare bulb hanging from the ceiling. The crying came again. Definitely the attic. The attic access was a pull-down ladder in the hallway ceiling. Matthew yanked it open and climbed. The heat hit him first. The attic was an oven, easily 110 degrees. No ventilation, no light except what filtered through a small gable vent. And in the corner, chained to an old radiator, was his daughter. Matthew's vision grade, his training, years of discipline, of emotional control, of staying calm under fire, all of it evaporated. He'd seen terrible things in Afghanistan. He'd seen children caught in crossfire, women brutalized by the Taliban, villages burned. But this was his daughter. Penny was almost unrecognizable. Her head was shaved, patches of scalp visible where hair had been torn out. She was skeletal, wearing only a filthy t-shirt several sizes too big. Her arms and legs were covered in circular burns, dozens of them, hundreds of them. Cigarette burns. Recent ones still raw and weeping, older ones scabbed over. A chain ran from a collar around her neck to the radiator. Just long enough for her to lie down on a filthy blanket, reach a bucket in the corner, access a bowl with what looked like dried cereal. She looked up as Matthew's head cleared the attic opening. Her eyes, those bright green eyes that had always sparkled with curiosity, were dull and sunken. She flinched. Penny. His voice broke. Oh God, Penny. Daddy. Her voice was a rasp. You came back. Matthew crawled to her, hands shaking now, shaking so hard he could barely work the padlock on the collar. I'm here, baby. I'm here. I'm so sorry. Mommy's boyfriend said if I screamed, he'd burn my eyes next. The words came out mechanical, like she'd been told this so many times she'd memorized it. I tried to be quiet. I tried so hard to be quiet. The padlock was industrial grade. Matthew didn't have tools. He pulled at it uselessly, then forced himself to think. I'm going to get you out. Just hold on. 5 minutes. I promise. He climbed down. Lynn stood at the bottom of the ladder, smoking a cigarette. Tears ran down her face, but she didn't move. The key, Matthew said. His voice was unrecognizable, flat, cold, dead. Now, Hugo has it. Who the fuck is Hugo? My boyfriend. She took a shaky drag. It wasn't supposed to be like this. She just kept misbehaving, kept crying for you, and Hugo said we needed to discipline her. And I tried to stop him at first, but Matthew hit her. He'd never hit a woman in his life, never raised his hand even when their marriage was falling apart, and Lynn threw plates at him, screamed that he loved the army more than his family. But he hit her now, a backhand that sent her sprawling. The key. Where is it? In Hugo's car, she sobbed. He went to work. He'll be back at 6. Matthew checked his watch. 3:47 p.m. He went to the garage, found a bolt cutter behind a pile of junk. Back in the attic, he cut through the chain. Not the collar, he'd need better tools for that, but enough to free her from the radiator. Penny fell into his arms, all bones and burns and trembling fear. She weighed maybe 40 pounds, 8 years old and starving. We're leaving, Matthew said. Right now. No. Penny's fingers dug into his shirt. He'll find us. He said he'd find me anywhere. He said he has friends. He said, Penny. Matthew pulled back enough to look at her face. Listen to me. I'm going to keep you safe. I promise. But first, I need to know, Is it just Hugo? Or are there others? She shook her head. Just him. And Mommy watched sometimes. She didn't help. Matthew carried her down from the attic, through the filthy house, past Lynn who sat on the floor, holding her bleeding mouth. He put Penny in his truck, cranked the AC, gave her his water bottle. Drink slow, he said. I'll be right back. He went back inside. Lynn hadn't moved. You're going to sit here, Matthew said. You're not going to call Hugo. You're not going to warn him. You're going to sit here and wait for him to come home. Do you understand? Matthew, please. If you try to leave, if you make a phone call, if you do anything except sit here, I will find you. And what I do to Hugo will feel merciful compared to what I do to you. She nodded, eyes wide with terror. Matthew went back to the truck. Penny had drunk half the water, was holding the bottle like it might disappear. We're going to a hotel, he said. We're going to get you checked out by a doctor I trust. And then I'm going to make a phone call. To the police? No, baby. Not to the police. At the hotel, a Hampton Inn 15 minutes away, Matthew called Dr. Sean Collins. Collins had been a medic in Matthew's unit, served 2 tours before going to medical school. He now worked at Vanderbilt Medical Center, but owed Matthew his life from a firefight in Helmand Province. Collins arrived within an hour, black medical bag in hand. He examined Penny in the hotel bathroom while Matthew stood outside, listening to her whimper. When Collins emerged, his face was grim. She needs a hospital. Those burns are infected. She's severely dehydrated, malnourished. I can treat the immediate stuff, but no hospital. Not yet. They'll call police, and this goes through the system, and Hugo gets lawyers and trials, and maybe walks on a technicality. Collins stared at him. Matthew, I need 12 hours, Sean. Stabilize her, keep her comfortable. 12 hours. What are you going to do? What I'm trained to do. Collins was quiet for a long moment. Then, I'll stay with her. But Matthew? Whatever you're planning. Don't ask. Don't know. Just take care of my daughter. Matthew made 3 more calls. The first was to Kurt Bruce, his spotter. Kurt was still in Afghanistan, but had contact stateside. I need information on someone, Matthew said. Hugo Mathis. Lives in Nashville, probably has a record. How fast? 3 hours. Done. The second call was to Isaac Connor, another member of their sniper unit who'd gotten out 6 months ago and moved to Nashville to work construction. I need you to come to this address, Matthew said, rattling off Lynn's house. Park down the street. Watch for a man coming home around 6 p.m. Text me when he arrives. Don't engage, just watch. What's this about? Penny. Isaac didn't ask anything else. I'll be there in 20 minutes. The third call was to Gerald Doyle, the oldest member of their unit. Doyle had retired 5 years ago, bought a farm outside Clarksville, raised horses. He'd also been a Marine sniper in Desert Storm and ran an underground network of veterans who helped each other when the official system failed them. I need 3 men I can trust, Matthew said. Men who won't ask questions and won't talk. What kind of work? The kind that doesn't make it to court. Doyle was silent. Then, I'll make some calls. Meet me at my place at 10 p.m. Matthew hung up. Penny was asleep in the hotel bed. Collins sitting beside her within 4 drip running fluids. The doctor had treated what he could, antibiotics for the infections, burn cream, pain medication. She'll live, Collins said quietly. Physically, but the psychological damage. I know. Do you? Because I've seen trauma like this before. This isn't something that goes away with revenge, Matthew. She's going to need years of therapy, support, love. She'll get it. All of it. I'm done deploying. I'm done with the Army. I'm going to be here for her every single day for the rest of my life. After you do whatever you're going to do tonight. Matthew looked at his daughter, small and broken, chest rising and falling with shallow breaths. Yeah, after tonight. At 5:52 p.m., Isaac texted, target approaching, driving a black Dodge Challenger. Parking now. Matthew was already in his truck, parked 3 blocks from Lynn's house. He changed into dark clothes, put his hair under a cap, wore gloves. Old habits from night operations. He watched Hugo Mathis get out of the Challenger. The man was exactly what Matthew expected. Mid-30s, gym rat build, wife-beater tank top showing off tattoos, swagger in his walk. Hugo grabbed a 6-pack from the passenger seat and headed inside. Matthew waited. Gave it 10 minutes. Then he walked up the driveway, keeping to the shadows. The front door was unlocked. Lynn would have left it that way, too scared to do otherwise. He slipped inside, heard voices from the kitchen. Hugo laughing, Lynn's voice shrill and nervous. Called the Red Cross? Are you stupid? I panicked. She was burning up with fever, and I thought, you don't think. That's the problem. You never fucking think. A slap. Lynn cried out. Now her dad's back early, which means we've got problems. Where's the kid? I don't know. He took her. Took her where? I don't know. Another slap. Harder. Something crashed. A bottle. Maybe. You're useless. I should have never let you talk me into this. Should have just dumped the brat at a fire station. Matthew moved through the living room, silent as death. His hand went to his belt, where he'd clipped a folding knife. Not his preferred weapon. He was a marksman, trained to kill from distance. But this needed to be up close. He stepped into the kitchen doorway. Hugo stood with his back turned, holding Lynn by the hair, her face pressed against the counter. He hadn't noticed Matthew yet. Hugo Mathis, Matthew said. Hugo spun, still holding Lynn. His eyes widened, then narrowed. Who the fuck? I'm Penny's father. Hugo dropped Lynn. His hand went to his back pocket, probably carrying. Matthew saw it in slow motion, the way he saw everything in combat. The reach, the shift in weight, the tell. He closed the distance in 2 steps, caught Hugo's wrist, twisted. The gun, a cheap .38 revolver, clattered to the floor. Matthew kicked it away and drove his knife into Hugo's thigh, just above the knee. Not deep enough to hit the femoral artery. Not yet. Hugo screamed and went down. Matthew yanked the knife out, kicked him in the ribs, hard enough to crack bone. Matthew, stop. Lynn scrambled backward, hitting the refrigerator. You'll kill him. That's the idea. Hugo tried to crawl toward the gun. Matthew stomped on his hand, felt bones crunch. Hugo screamed again. 237, Matthew said. That's how many cigarette burns my daughter has. Dr. Collins counted while he was treating her. 237 times you hurt an 8-year-old child. Fuck you, Hugo spat. Blood leaked from his mouth. She deserved it. Little brat wouldn't shut up, always crying for daddy. Matthew kicked him in the face. Teeth scattered across the linoleum. Don't stop talking, Matthew said. I want to hear all of it. I want to know exactly what you did. Because I'm going to do worse. Over the next hour, Matthew learned everything. Hugo had a record, domestic assault, aggravated battery, served 3 years in Riverbend maximum security. Met Lynn at a bar 6 months ago. Moved in within weeks. Penny annoyed him. Her crying, her neediness, her obvious love for her father. So he started disciplining her. Slaps at first, then cigarette burns, then starvation, then the attic. Lynn had protested initially, but gave up after Hugo hit her a few times. She convinced herself it was discipline, that Penny needed to learn respect. The human mind's capacity for self-delusion was infinite. At 7:30 p.m., headlights swept through the front window. Isaac came in first, followed by 2 men Matthew didn't recognize. Hard-faced veterans with the same look in their eyes as his unit. Men who'd seen things, done things, and come home to find the system didn't give a shit. Gerald sent us, one said. His name was Cliff Wood, former Force Recon Marine. The other was Antonio Murphy, Army Ranger turned private contractor. Heard you've got a problem that needs solving. Matthew gestured to Hugo, who lay bleeding and semi-conscious on the kitchen floor. This thing tortured my 8-year-old daughter. Burned her 237 times. Starved her. Chained her in an attic. The 3 men looked at Hugo. Cliff cracked his knuckles. What do you want done? Antonio asked. I want him to disappear. Completely. No body, no evidence, no trail. Like he never existed. We can do that, Cliff said. But the woman? All eyes turned to Lynn. She'd shrunk into the corner, shaking, mascara running down her face. I didn't, she started. I tried to stop him. You watched, Matthew said. You watched him burn our daughter, and you did nothing. You're just as guilty. So what? Isaac asked. Same treatment. Matthew considered. Every fiber of his being wanted to say yes. Wanted to make Lynn suffer the way Penny had suffered. But he thought of his daughter, asleep in that hotel room, and what she'd want. What she'd need. No, he said finally. She lives. But she loses everything. We document every burn, every injury, every piece of evidence. We make sure she goes to prison for child abuse and neglect. She gets a trial. She gets lawyers. She gets the system. Because Penny needs to see that justice exists, even if it's not the justice I want. Lynn sobbed harder. What about this piece of shit? Cliff nudged Hugo with his boot. He doesn't get a trial. They wrapped Hugo in plastic sheeting from the garage, loaded him in Antonio's van. Hugo regained consciousness at some point and started screaming, begging. Matthew felt nothing. He'd switched off, the same mental shutdown that allowed him to take shots from 2 kilometers away, to watch targets drop and feel no guilt because they deserved it. Where are you taking him? Matthew asked. Better you don't know, Antonio said. But he won't be found. Ever. They left at 9 p.m. Matthew called 911 at 9:15, reported child abuse at Lynn's address. Police arrived by 9:30, found Lynn in the kitchen, surrounded by evidence Matthew had carefully arranged. Photos on his phone of Penny's injuries, the chain from the attic, burn implements, Penny's stripped bedroom. He waited at the hotel until the detective called. Her name was Renee Dalton, 20-year veteran of Nashville PD's Special Victims Unit. Mr. Scott, I need you to bring your daughter to Vanderbilt Medical Center. We need to document her injuries for the case. Is Lynn Prince under arrest? Yes. Child abuse, child endangerment, aggravated assault. She's not getting bail. But I need to ask, where's Hugo Mathis? Your ex-wife said he was living there, but there's no sign of him. I don't know anyone named Hugo Mathis, Matthew said. I came home, found my daughter in the attic, freed her, and called you. That's all I know. Dalton was quiet. Then, okay, bring Penny in whenever you're ready. At Vanderbilt, the hospital staff treated Penny with heartbreaking gentleness. Nurses cried. Doctors took hundreds of photos, documented every burn, every bruise, every sign of neglect. The rape kit came back negative. Hugo apparently had limits, or just hadn't gotten around to it yet. Penny stayed in the hospital for 3 days. Matthew never left her side. Sean Collins checked on them regularly, coordinating with the hospital staff, making sure Penny got the best care. On the 4th day, Detective Dalton visited. I wanted you to know, we're filing charges against Lynn Prince. With the evidence and her confession, she's looking at 25 to life. The DA's being very aggressive. Good, Matthew said. We're still looking for Hugo Mathis. He's got a warrant out, but he's vanished. No credit card use. No cell phone pings. No sightings. It's like he disappeared into thin air. Maybe he ran, Matthew suggested. Maybe he knew the cops were coming and bolted. Dalton studied him. She was in her 50s, gray hair pulled back, eyes that had seen every kind of human cruelty. Maybe someone made sure he couldn't run. I wouldn't know anything about that. No, I don't suppose you would. She stood to leave, then turned back. Off the record, if I were you, and someone had done that to my kid, I'd have done exactly what I think you did, and I'd sleep just fine at night. Matthew didn't respond. Dalton left, and Matthew went back to sitting beside Penny, holding her hand while she slept. The next week was a blur. Matthew contacted Army Victim Advocate Services, started the process for hardship discharge. His colonel approved it immediately. Matthew Scott had given 8 years to the military, had taken shots that saved American lives, had earned every commendation and medal the Army offered. If he needed to come home for his daughter, no one would fight him. He bought a small house in Franklin, Tennessee. Quiet neighborhood, good schools, far from Lynn's place. Set up Penny's new room exactly how she wanted. Dinosaur posters, stuffed animals, a nightlight that projected stars on the ceiling. Installed cameras, alarm systems, locks on every door and window. The bedroom had 2 exits, one normal door, one window with a fire ladder. He taught Penny how to use both. Dr. Sean Collins recommended a child psychologist named Celia Ho, who specialized in trauma cases. Dr. Ho met with Penny 3 times a week, slowly, carefully helping her process what had happened. She told Matthew it would take years, maybe decades. Some wounds never fully healed. But Penny was resilient, stronger than anyone gave her credit for. Within a month, she was smiling occasionally. Within 2, she laughed at a joke Matthew told. Within 3, she asked to go to the dinosaur exhibit at the Adventure Science Center. They went on a Tuesday morning when it was nearly empty. Penny held Matthew's hand the entire time, but her eyes lit up at the T-Rex skeleton, the Triceratops fossil, the interactive dig site. "Dad?" she said quietly, standing in front of the Velociraptor display. "Yeah, baby? Thank you for saving me." Matthew knelt down, eye level with his daughter. "You saved yourself by staying strong. I just got you out." "What happened to Hugo?" He'd been dreading this question. "He's gone. He can't hurt you anymore." "Did you kill him?" Children were perceptive. Too perceptive sometimes. "Would that bother you if I did?" Penny thought about it. "No. He was bad. Really bad. I'm glad he's gone." "Then that's all you need to know." They moved on to the planetarium show. Lynn's trial happened 8 months later. Matthew attended every day, sitting in the gallery while prosecutors laid out the evidence. Photos of Penny's injuries flashed on screens. Medical experts testified about starvation, burn patterns, psychological trauma. Lynn sat at the defense table, crying quietly, occasionally glancing back at Matthew with pleading eyes. He felt nothing. The defense tried to paint her as a victim too, manipulated by Hugo Mathis, afraid for her own life, suffering from depression and substance abuse. They produced a psychologist who testified about battered woman syndrome, coercive control, learned helplessness. The jury didn't buy it. Guilty on all counts. 28 years in prison, eligible for parole in 20. Penny didn't attend the trial. Dr. Ho advised against it, but Matthew told her the outcome that evening over pizza. "Good," Penny said. She was 9 now, hair growing back in patchy tufts, burns fading to scars. She'd gained weight, lost that skeletal look, still had nightmares, still flinched at sudden movements. But she was healing. "You okay?" Matthew asked. "Yeah, I'm okay." She took another bite of pepperoni. "Dad, can I ask you something?" "Anything. Do you think you'll ever get married again?" The question caught him off guard. "I don't know." "Why?" "Because I think you should. You're a good dad. You deserve to be happy too." "I am happy. I have you." "I know. But," she struggled for words, "I don't want you to be alone when I grow up. I want you to have someone." Matthew reached across the table, took her hand. "I'll think about it. But right now, you're the only person I need." Hugo Mathis was never found. The investigation went cold after 6 months. Nashville PD officially listed him as a fugitive, suspected of fleeing the state to avoid prosecution. A warrant remained active, but no leads ever materialized. Cliffwood called Matthew once, a year after that night. "Just wanted you to know, the problem's been permanently resolved. Deep permanent. Concrete permanent." "I don't know what you're talking about," Matthew said. "Good. Keep it that way. And Scott, you ever need anything, you call. Brothers take care of brothers." The call disconnected. Matthew deleted the number. He got his hardship discharge, took a job as a security consultant for a tech company. Boring work, normal hours, home every night. Started taking night classes in psychology, thinking maybe he could help other veterans with PTSD, with transition issues, with all the invisible wounds that didn't show up on x-rays. Penny thrived, made friends at her new school, joined the soccer team, got straight A's. Still saw Dr. Ho once a week, still had scars inside and out, but she was living, really living. On the 2nd anniversary of that terrible day, Matthew took Penny to Percy Warner Park for a hike. It was June again, hot and humid, cicadas screaming in the trees. They climbed to the overlook, sat on a bench, looked out over Nashville, sprawling in the valley below. "I don't think about them anymore," Penny said suddenly. "Mom and Hugo. Not every day, anyway." "That's good." "Do you?" "Sometimes. But not as much as I used to." She leaned against him. "I'm glad you came home early. I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't." Matthew wrapped an arm around her shoulders. "I'll always come home, Penny. Always. No matter where I am or what I'm doing, if you need me, I'll be there." "I know." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun arc across the sky. Matthew thought about everything that had happened. The discovery, the rage, the choice he'd made to step outside the law and deliver his own justice. He thought about Hugo Mathis's last moments, about whether the man had suffered enough, about whether any amount of suffering could balance the scales. He didn't regret it, not even a little. Some people didn't deserve trials and lawyers and appeals. Some people deserved exactly what they'd given to others. But he also thought about Penny, resilient, brilliant, damaged but healing. She needed stability now, needed normalcy, needed a father who was present and whole. Revenge had been necessary, but it was also finite. A single night of violence to end years of violence. After that, the real work began, building a life, creating safety, proving to his daughter that the world could be good again. "Dad," Penny said, pulling him from his thoughts. "Yeah, I want to get ice cream." Matthew laughed. "Ice cream it is." They hiked back down the trail, got in the truck, drove to Jenny's Splendid Ice Creams. Penny ordered her favorite, Brambleberry Crisp, and they sat outside at a small table, watching people walk by. 3 years later, when Penny was 12, she came home from school with a project assignment. Interview someone who'd overcome adversity. She wanted to interview Matthew about Afghanistan. They sat in the living room, Penny with her notebook and a list of prepared questions, Matthew wondering how honest to be. "What was the hardest thing about being a soldier?" she asked. "Leaving you," he said immediately. "Every deployment, every mission, I thought about you. Wondered what you were doing, if you were okay, if you missed me. Did you ever think you wouldn't come back?" "Sometimes. Combat's unpredictable. You could do everything right and still catch a bullet." "Were you scared?" "Yes. But I had a job to do, people counting on me. So I did the job." Penny made notes, then looked up. "Do you think what you learned in the Army made you a better dad?" Matthew considered this carefully. "I learned discipline, patience, how to stay calm in crisis, how to make hard decisions. All of that made me a better father. But it also gave me the skills to do things I'm not proud of." "Like what?" Here was the moment. He could deflect, change the subject. Or he could be honest. Like making sure the man who hurt you could never hurt anyone again. Penny was quiet. "Then good. I'm glad you did. Your psychologist would probably say revenge isn't healthy. Dr. Ho says a lot of things. But she also says everyone processes trauma differently. And knowing you made him gone, that helped me feel safe again." "I'd do it again," Matthew said. "Every time. For you. I know. That's why you're my hero, Dad." The project earned an A. The teacher wrote in the margins, "Beautiful relationship. Your father sounds like a remarkable man." At 17, Penny was accepted to Vanderbilt University on a full academic scholarship. She wanted to study forensic psychology, help put away people like Hugo Mathis using science and evidence instead of violence. "Are you okay with that?" she asked Matthew when she told him. "I know what happened to me, and I know what you did, and I know the law didn't exactly work the way it was supposed to." "Penny." Matthew cut her off gently. "You survived something terrible. If you want to make sure other kids don't suffer the same way, that's incredible. I'm proud of you. More proud than you could possibly know. Even though I'm choosing the law over," she gestured vaguely. "Over what you did. What I did was necessary in the moment. But it's not a solution. It's not sustainable. The law, when it works right, is better. Justice is better than revenge." "Do you really believe that?" Matthew smiled. "I'm learning to." On Penny's first day at Vanderbilt, Matthew helped her move into the dorms. Other parents were there too, crying and fussing, taking pictures. Matthew just watched his daughter, healthy, strong, brilliant, scarred, but not broken, arrange textbooks on her desk, pin photos to her bulletin board. One photo was of them at the Adventure Science Center, standing in front of the T-Rex skeleton. Penny was 9, hair still patchy, but smiling wide. Matthew stood beside her, hand on her shoulder, looking at her instead of the camera. "My favorite picture," Penny said, noticing him staring. "Mine too." That evening, after all the other parents had left, Matthew and Penny walked around campus. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the Gothic buildings. "I'm scared," Penny admitted, "about being on my own." "You've been on your own before, in the worst possible way. And you survived. That's different." "Ow!" "Because then I had no choice. Now I'm choosing to be independent. And what if I can't handle it?" Matthew stopped walking, turned to face her. "Penny, you're the strongest person I know. You endured torture from someone who was supposed to love you. You rebuilt yourself from nothing. You took your trauma and turned it into purpose. If you can do all that, you can handle college. What if I need you?" Then call. I'm 15 minutes away. I'll drop everything. Like you always do. Like I always will. They hugged there on the quad, and Matthew thought about that day 9 years ago when he climbed into the attic and found his daughter chained like an animal. He thought about the rage, the helplessness, the absolute certainty that the system would fail them both. He'd taken justice into his own hands. He'd become something dark and violent and outside the law. And he'd sleep peacefully every night for the rest of his life because his daughter was safe. That was all that mattered. Penny pulled back, wiping her eyes. Okay, I'm okay. You can go. You sure? Yeah, I've got a roommate meeting in 10 minutes, and you're embarrassing me. She smiled through her tears. Matthew laughed. Call me tomorrow. I will. He walked back to his truck, drove home to the quiet house in Franklin, made dinner for one, watched TV, went to bed early. Before sleep, he thought about Kurt Bruce, still active duty, still in Afghanistan. Thought about Isaac Connor, working construction, married now with 2 kids. Thought about Cliff Wood and Antonio Murphy, wherever they were. Brothers, all of them, bound by the things they'd seen and done, the choices they'd made, the lines they'd crossed. He thought about Hugo Mathis, buried deep where he'd never be found, and felt nothing. No guilt, no satisfaction, just a distant acknowledgement that the world was better without him in it. And he thought about Penny, brilliant, damaged, healing, strong, starting her own life, chasing her own dreams. She'd never forget what happened. The scars would always be there, physical and psychological. But she'd survived. She'd more than survived. She'd won. That was the only revenge that mattered. Years passed. Penny graduated summa cum laude, went to grad school, became a forensic psychologist working with the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit. She helped profile serial offenders, helped put away monsters who hurt children. Matthew retired from the security consulting job, spent his days volunteering at veteran support centers, helping other soldiers transition to civilian life. He dated occasionally, but never remarried. Penny had been right that he deserved companionship, but he'd also learned to be content alone. On the 15th anniversary of that terrible June day, Matthew drove out to Percy Warner Park, hiked up to the overlook, sat on the same bench where he and Penny had talked years ago. His phone buzzed. A text from Penny. Thinking about you today. Love you, Dad. He texted back. Love you too. Proud of you. Always. The sun set over Nashville. Matthew watched the city lights flicker on, thought about all the lives happening down there, the good and the bad, the violence and the healing, the choices people made every single day between darkness and light. He'd chosen darkness once. One night of terrible, permanent darkness to protect his daughter. And he'd do it again without hesitation. But he'd also chosen light. 9 years of being present, being patient, being the father Penny needed. 9 years of choosing healing over hatred, building over destroying. Both choices have been necessary. Both have been right. Matthew stood, stretched, headed back down the trail. Tomorrow he was meeting Penny for brunch. She was in Nashville for a conference, rare time together. They'd eat too much, laugh about nothing, be easy with each other the way only people who'd survived hell together could be. And somewhere, deep under concrete and earth, Hugo Mathis was gone. Justice, in its own way, had been served. The world kept turning. And Matthew Scott slept peacefully every single night.
This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your precious time. If you enjoyed this story, then please make sure you subscribe to this channel. That would help me a lot. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.